Good morning, everybody. It's the Pollinator, Ray Gibson, and boy, the title of this blog is probably going to be Black Love. You know, as in the wake of the murder of Stephon Clark in Sacramento, California, which was one of my old stomping grounds because I spent almost 20 years in the Bay Area of California. And I remember going to Sacramento a couple of times, and I wasn't overly impressed by the area because back then I think it was predominantly white. I don't even remember. I did go to a club, and I think I went to a couple of clubs, a few of them, and saw black people there. But for the most part, as I was driving around the area, I didn't really notice many of us. And in the wake of his murder, and I'm going to call it what it is, flat out, cold-blooded murder by the men in blue. I'm trying to remember a time in history where I've seen this country so divided. I don't know if it is because I didn't notice what was going on post-Vietnam, post-civil rights, the LGBT community fighting for their rights in the 70s, I think it was. And I don't know if I didn't notice what was going on during the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s until now, or because I was traveling quite a bit. I was traveling the country on contracts for customers of Tandem Computers. But what I do know is from a very early age, when we left the ghetto when I was 10 years old, I saw racism, privilege, fragility through my eyes alone. And why was I alone? Because I grew up in a predominantly, I'm going to say not even predominantly, all white neighborhood. There were, through the time I was in the 4th grade until I switched schools in high school, there were only 4 of us. I didn't have a gang of people who could stick up for me when racist shit happened. And did stuff happen? Yes. That's something that people don't realize, that even as the son of a celebrity, I experienced probably more racism, overt racism, than most people in the town I grew up in experience. The reason they don't know it is because I was a child and I was completely incapable of verbalizing, let alone articulating what was happening to me as a child. My mother knew, and my father knew some of it. He was on the road most of the year, every year, while I was growing up. So my mother got to see the brunt of what we went through as the only black people in that area. And the other family lived closer to the junior high I went to than where I grew up. So I never had a relationship with that family. We just knew we were the only ones in that school system. uh, grade school, it was just me and my sister. And it wasn't until I was in junior high that I met the other family in the area. And there was two girls. One of them was my age, and the other one was my sister's age. And we never crossed paths, crossed paths at school. Not really. I remember my mother taking us to that other family's house to meet them. But I don't remember much interaction with that girl that was my age in school. So a lot of crap happened, people. During the civil rights movement, I was being called out my name, and I'm just going to tell you a couple of stories. When we first moved to that neighborhood, and I was 10 years old, I walked a lot. And I went from my house and was going to, it was like a strip mall. You know, it had a grocery store and a bunch of other little stores around that grocery store. And I was going down there to get some candy or whatever, maybe a pop, we called it pop or whatnot. And I was walking down the street. I was a few miles from home, and I happened to turn a corner. And I was walking down that street, and I looked over to my right, and this white woman came tearing out of her house. There was a child in the yard, which I wasn't really paying attention to, but the mother came tearing out of the house, grabbed her child, picked the child up, and ran back in the house and locked every lock she could find on her door. And I remember, you know, I was 10. I had no way of understanding what had happened, except that after she locked all the doors, she was peeking through her curtains to watch me pass that house. And that was the first time that I started to internalize black hatred. Then I got to the end of that street, which was only, you know, a block away. And when I got to the end of the street, a station wagon full of little white kids, a mother and a father in that station wagon, drove past. The children in the back of the station wagon rolled down their windows and started yelling racial slurs at me. The parents, they didn't do anything. I didn't see, and you know what? It all happened for me in slow motion. I'm pretty sure that car was probably going 15, 20, 30 miles an hour. But to me, it seemed like it took forever for that car to pass. And I'll never, ever forget how I felt that day, which was something that a group of black kids walking down the street probably would have never experienced. And that isn't the only thing that happened. That's just one story that I'm telling you. Other things happened in that hood. Didn't matter that we had a lot of money. See, money does not excuse you from anything if you are black in the United States. You can be a millionaire and a billionaire, and you're still going to experience racism, white privilege, white fragility, white dominance, white nationalism in the United States. And I experienced more than my share of that as a child. I was so fucking lonely because I didn't have any backup. I had to learn to defend myself, and I had to learn to internalize all of that hatred that was expressed at me, specifically at me. I had to learn how to survive it. I had to learn how to cope with it without my family, without my friends. I didn't have any friends when we first went there anyway. So, you know, I had white friends over time, but not when I first got there. The first day of class at that white school, my elementary school in the 4th grade. I had a little accident playing with my Uncle Fred in their house, and I ran out of his front door. I ran out of their front door and hit the glass and broke all the glass in the door, and my finger got split wide open. So I was, with that summer, before we moved in to that neighborhood, they rushed me to the emergency room, and they stitched it up. I still have the scar on this finger. And then I had this great big atrocity of a thing on my finger the first day of school in that white school called Paddock Road Elementary. I didn't have any expectations because I was too young. But when I walked in that room, when the principal took me to my homeroom, and I walked in there was probably 35, 40 white kids in that class. And when I walked in the door, the entire class stopped talking. Everybody stopped and stared at me like I was the man on the moon, like I was an alien, like I was a Martian. And I remember this sinking feeling that I had was like, what's wrong with me? Why are they staring at me like that, like this? And this was all going on before class started, before the bell rang. And, you know, the kids were very excited and talking. And like I said, when I walked in the room, everybody stopped talking and started staring. The teacher came into the room, and I froze. I didn't even go try to find a seat. I was just standing there, looking at them, looking at me, and having the feeling that I was not normal. The teacher came in, and it was a woman. I don't remember any of my teachers' names. I mean, none of them, because I have a name blockage to this day, but I don't remember any of my teachers' names. She came in the room, made a really quick assessment as to what was going on, and she clapped her hands like that and said, "Everybody take a seat and eyes forward." You know, and I went and sat down as homeroom started, whatever we had to do in homeroom. I think the Pledge of Allegiance and all that other crap. I say all this to say that that was the beginning of my disconnect from my own identity. Just to survive that neighborhood, I had to disconnect from my heritage. I had to disconnect from being a black child. I just totally wanted to blend into the fucking wall. And there was no way that I could, because me and my sister were the only ones in that school. And a lot of things happened because of that. So to survive, I became very introverted. I didn't say much of anything, ever. All I did was play sports, and there was something else that I did to make myself, to feel like I had about a pinhead full of control over my environment. Something that I did that will be in my book, that is in my book, about how I dealt with that and how I made myself feel some kind of pleasure about being in that hood with no backup except for my mother. I was my sister's keeper. I protected my sister, so she couldn't even, you know, we were in separate classes. So if things happened to her, I didn't know about them. If things happened to me, if things happened to her, I didn't know about it. If things happened to me, she didn't know about it. But if we went home and told our mother, and our mother came to school, that's when each of us knew the other one was experiencing some of the most intense fucking bullshit racism than any black child in that city. For everybody who thought I led such a blessed life. Yeah, it was blessed. And it was extremely opposite. So in the wake of Stephon Clark getting killed, it has never been more clear to me that there is a total disconnect in the black community, in the communities in the United States. The media and people who I would consider not woke are attacking the boy's character. Yes, he is a boy to me. He was 22 years old. Not old enough to find himself, not old enough to have his brain fully developed, not old enough that he didn't make mistakes, not old enough where there should be, if we didn't suffer from post-traumatic slave disorder in this country, nobody would be judging that boy after the fact. The media is jumping in on it, making sure to take the focus off of the fact that the men in blue and white people around this country get to shoot us and to kill us and to cut our lives short with no consequence. They were doing it in the 60s when I was growing up, and they're still doing it. And then they get a whole bunch of people to distract from the fact that this is happening, to attack the victims. So now they've got these, I wrote it down, okay, here we go. These young black women who don't even know they're suffering from intersectional feminism. This is the form of feminism I was talking about in either my last video or the video before. But this kind of feminism that really came from white women that black women have internalized, subconsciously internalized, to the point where every time they either experience something negative in a relationship with a black man, or they, or they see someone like the lost child, Stephon Clark, they pick apart his personality and are looking at the fact that he had issues with black women. And so everybody's running that direction, jumping on that bandwagon, especially black women, and picking that brother apart when they don't realize that the whole premise behind the protests that are going on in California is around white cops killing us. Not about that boy. They didn't ask that boy what he believed in before they killed him. They didn't even know. And it could happen to any man, woman, and child, black man, woman, and child in America. It can happen. It has happened. It will continue to happen as long as we do not challenge the colonizers here. As long as we so easily get distracted into this bullshit calling look up dirt on the victim. That is what they want us to do. That is how they were going to get that whole movement to die, is to get everybody's attention to go on something else except those white cops. And the, I don't know her name, but the, I don't know if she's the chief of the police or some district attorney or judge or whoever she is. She's got a very, very bad track record for letting the police do whatever the fuck they want to black people. Now I want you to ask yourself something. Why is it when these things happen, how come you never ever hear about, except when these masked white murderers run around killing a bunch of people, except for that, You don't hear of any single case of a white man or woman or other getting murdered in the United States by the police or by some vigilante asshole racist running around. That doesn't happen here. Mass shooters happen because there's some real sickos running around with getting their hands on guns. But you don't hear about that in any community, the LGBT or not. Who's all the people getting killed in the black community? They're either men or trans women. Black. You say African American if you want. But either way, melanated people. And it's hard and easy for me to see why black people are so easily distracted by the drama that has been created in the aftermath of Stephon Clark getting murdered by the police. They're falling for the okie doke, y'all. Okie doke. Okay, here's how we'll get here's how we'll get all the protests to calm down and all the, what could happen in Sacramento. I put a post on my timeline that if people don't pick up the subliminal messages and don't pick up what's really going on and start writing to their congressmen and start writing to their House of Representatives and start writing to their local lawmakers and start making phone calls, and if they didn't start doing that in the aftermath of these protests dying down, that the whole thing will be over in a month. Nobody doing shit but attacking each other on the internet. And we'll just let this whole thing die until it happens again. Hello. It's going to happen again. And it may be your son. And it may be your daughter. And it may be you that this happens to. I've had enough near-death experiences being black in America to know that anything is possible, no matter how much money you make and no matter how safe you think you are and how embedded you think you are away from things like that happening to you. Stephon Clark did not get murdered because he was a thug. He did not get murdered because of who he married. He did not, I don't even know if he married her. He did not get murdered because of who he dated, that his children are mixed. They didn't kill that boy because of any of that. They killed that boy because he had black skin. And the police have been taught to fear us. Their new excuse for getting away with it is, I fear for my life. From a boy in his backyard with a cell phone? What the fuck did they fear? With his back turned. What did they fear? It's all a lie. It's all smoke and mirrors. And y'all people in the United States are falling for the okie doke. And it's just infuriating me because this shit is going to keep happening, people, if you don't wake up to what's really going on. And then I've been attacked I had some black woman, because of her fucking bitterness about black men, attack me, asking me, do I march for the KKK? Because I said in that post, y'all are a bunch of gullible idiots if you falling for the okie doke. Meaning, okie doke, little follower, you just gonna follow the wave of the drama that's getting created in the aftermath of that man's murder. Okie doke. Okay, massa. Now who's the coon? Anybody out there even calling me that or even coming close to calling me that is misguided and misled. That's their own internal self-hatred being projected onto me. They don't know me. They don't know my politics. They don't know that I am pro-black. They don't know anything. All they know is that I came out openly and said, y'all some gullible fools for following this train of thought that he deserved to die and the protest deserved to die because of that little boy's, that young man's politics. Oh, and I said, you know what? I hope when you die, you ain't got no skeletons in your closet. Because if you do, a whole shitload of people, white, black, brown, Asian, whatever, are going to fall for the okie doke and they're going to be talking about shit about you over your grave. If you got any skeletons in your closet, and trust me, you do. If you are in America and you've made any mistakes in your life, which who hasn't made mistakes in their life? Do you want your mistakes pointed out like that? And for people to turn around and say you deserve to die and they ain't sticking up for your ass because you were anti-short, you were anti-whatever, anti-black, anti-this, anti-that. That's what that little girl, to me she was a little girl, she was acting very immature, tried to say about me is what, was I anti-black? Because I was calling people out in their groups all over Fuckerbook that where there's black people fighting inside of them, the men against the women, about the legitimacy of Stephon Clark's personality problems. If you ask me, most of those people that was talking all that shit got some personality problems. Because it's all going to die down in Sacramento and any other movements that are going on in the United States around it. And in a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, who knows, we're going to hear about another killing. Either some vigilante idiot, some sicko who's got their hands on too many rifles and guns and automatic weapons, or the police, who have all been given a license to fear us and to kill us just because they are afraid of our skin color. Not us. We can be the most loving people on the planet, but they don't know that before they shoot. They're looking at the skin first, and they ain't considering who you are. They're not considering your contributions to society. And when you're 22 years old, you haven't made any. This is what makes me mad, is because my guess is a lot of those people running their mouth. Number one, they never saw the civil rights movement in action. They don't know none about it. They haven't studied it. They don't know that they're talking out of line. They don't know that they're talking out of turn. And they don't know how to fight civilly for the right to life. No matter what sexuality you are, no matter what gender you are in the world, in the diaspora of black people. It shouldn't have to matter whether I'm a good guy or a bad guy, a good woman or a bad woman, blah, 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 blah. That shit shouldn't matter. What matters is that white supremacy is just it's enough to make you numb. And so there's a whole lot of numb people around that all they seem to be able to do about these atrocities going on here is to fight and bicker with each other and to shoot arrows at each other and to blast each other instead of putting their energy and their efforts and their mental thinking, their critical analysis of this situation and point the fault where it belongs. The white cops that killed him. I think there was a black cop there too. The men in blue that think it's okay to run around and kill us because they're going to get off. They're going to get paid vacation while the investigation is going on. And then juries, white juries, with maybe a sprinkle of 1 or 2 or 3 black people on that jury are going to acquit those officers, just like they did when all those white cops beat up Rodney King. And just like they do every time any black person gets murdered by them throughout the history that we've been here in this country. Knowingly been here. I don't want to argue about how long we've really, melanated people have been in the United States. But since slavery, they have always gotten away with this cold-blooded murder. Always. So is everybody just going to go numb and just start fighting with each other about this bullshit? Or are they going to take real action? And I'm not talking about violence against them. I'm talking about using this and doing something, even if it's just something, to protest without leaving your house. Yeah, because you don't have to anymore. Not in this fucking day and age of the internet. Do you even have to leave your house to do something about it? To make a phone call, to send an email, to put the right thing about it on social media. And let me tell you what the wrong thing is. To be attacking each other. This is how they've divided black men and women in America. It started in the 1960s. And it ended with the civil rights movement. And then they split it right down the end. Intersectional feminism came in and got the black women to jump on the feminism bandwagon. Left the black men in the cold. And it's been divided that way ever since. Do people really know that? They don't. They weren't even, half of these idiots that are running around running off at the mouth weren't even alive back then. To even know that's what happened. And they're not researching what happened, how it happened. This is the kind of critical analysis that a man that I have taken it upon myself to start watching, and people like him, talking about critical analysis of the plight of the American black man and woman. And then you can add to that sexualities. But there is no critical analysis going on. There's just people shooting from the hip, being extremely emotionally left or right about the issue, and not dead center and doing something about it. That's why people are protesting. But it's going to die, as do all movements that have been started since Cittadini got in office in Washington. They protested during that election. And they know, the media knows, and white Americans know how to just let that shit blow over and then carry on the business of being supremacist and white nationalists and racist, and then fragile about hearing about it. They don't want to hear it. They'll just wait till it blows over, and then everybody will observe how we treat each other in the process of what happens. Where is the black love? I see black hatred. And anybody accusing somebody else of being anti-black when they are exhibiting hatred towards me is, guess what? Anti-black. Oh my God. So not only are we fighting with each other, we're also fighting against society, who is using us as target practice. Could it happen to you? Sure, it could. If I could roll up to a 7-Eleven in a brand new 1984 BMW and have some white guy sitting on the sidewalk homeless say, "Oh God, another educated nigger." If that man had a gun that day, How much you make a bet he was jealous enough and he was envious enough to shoot me dead because I stepped out of that brand new car? How much you make a bet that could have been a possibility? Instead, his friends ran over to him and said, man, you can't say that. Too late. He had already said it. The damage inside of me had already been done. Just like these assholes running around Fuckerbook, doing the exact same thing and having the employees of that company say, we'll just block them. After they have lit a bomb in your heart. After they exhibited hatred towards us. They don't care what that shit, because they don't think we're human. They don't care about our feelings on that platform. It's totally the okey doke they're doing on behalf of white people on that platform. Okey doke, you can do that. We ain't gonna do nothing to you. That's within our policy. That's within our company standards for you to be able to do that to somebody. We're not gonna do nothing to you. In fact, if he complains too much, we're gonna kick his ass off the platform or put him in group jail because he dared to speak up when that shit happened to him, when you did that to him. And when I say him, I'm talking about me. Yeah, I've had some racist shit happening around there, but carried out by white people. And the ones who do it, they're still running around that platform doing it to other people. One of them is a criminal that the police are looking for in Australia. Didn't show up for court. And he's abused other people that have contacted me and told me, ooh, that guy is bad news. You think Fuckbook cares? I put it on my timeline. What he said. Screenshotted it. Put it on my timeline. That idiot is still running around. Free and clear. They ain't blocking him. They'll find a reason to block me for even putting it out there. I've been kicked out of group for putting a screenshot of somebody calling me a nigger in the group. And got accused by the admins of starting drama. And then they didn't do anything. You know what they did because I put that in there? They kicked me out. They kicked another woman out that racist said something to. He called her a fat bitch. They kicked me out, kicked her out, and they kicked him out at the same time. Thus glossing over the fact that this asshole is still running around to this day being a racist. And he was only 20 years old. White. He wasn't around during the civil rights movement either. And the internet has given people a license to shoot their mouth off when they wouldn't do it in person. Oh, they got a lot of balls. They got a lot of nerve right now hiding behind their computers and behind their phones. They talk mega shit. This is what the internet has created, a monster in people who are really, really clueless about who they are. Black, white, brown, yellow, red. It doesn't matter your color. It doesn't matter your sexuality. It doesn't matter your gender. There is a lot of lost people. We have lost generations who have no idea who they are or what kind of messages and propaganda that they're believing and what they're doing to each other. They are not loving one another. Back to health, to some semblance of functionality, not dysfunction, function. People are not functioning. They're surviving, but they're being very dysfunctional in their survival and their methods of communicating with people of their own kind and people not of their own kind. We ain't got no black leaders, even though there's a lot of people vying for that spotlight. Ain't nobody running around right now that was like Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or Marcus Garvey or Angela Davis or any of those leaders that were born out of the civil rights movement. There ain't nobody running around right now like that. There's a lot of people that are trying to wake other people up, and that are some very, very, very intelligent, smart people. But as far as being leaders, I don't know, because everybody's so divided up here first, and then in their actions. And I'm caught in between worlds. The transgender, cisgender, black communities who are also being isolated from the white communities of the same kind. So I'm either being tossed aside because I'm transgender, or I'm getting tossed aside because I'm black, or I'm being tossed aside because I'm a man. Of course, I'm gonna, knock the doors down, but I still notice this stuff, and it's still damaging, and it's still a waste of time for me to prove I am worthy, as worthy as them. Be they gay black, lesbian black, heterosexual black, transgender black. Did I leave anything out? Queer black? I don't know. I'm thinking out loud, folks. And I notice everything that's happening and why it's happening. And I'm only one person who's got a very small YouTube channel, 2 channels, where I cannot make a difference with these channels, because I'm not spending a lot of time making them bigger, so that the word can get out that people need to wake up. When I say wake up, and I say silence is consent, I mean that. It's not just a hashtag that I use just to be using it. I mean every word of it. You don't say nothing, you're consenting to it. If you say something and you attack the wrong people, you're also consenting to it. And where is the black love for one another? Because if we don't love one another, we will perish. And that breaks my heart. Pollinator out.